system unfolding. Military science fiction podcast. Untold stories every Wednesday. Military science fiction podcast. Discussion, interviews, reviews, and rants. Military science fiction podcast.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about outlining, not plotting, outlining. So, Rick, for folks that those might mean the same thing, do you want to talk about like how you approach those two concepts and how they're different for you?
Well, I mean, plotting is a very general term. It can mean anything from even people who do, or what we call pantsers. They do some plotting, you know.
Mhm.
Back when I used to, however, whatever euphemism you want to use, writing into the dark or whatever.
I was just gonna say Dean Wesley Smith's thing, yeah.
Yeah, I hated that. I've always hated that term, writing into the dark. It sounds so pretentious. But when I used to write, you know, just staring at the screen and typing whatever came into my head, I still would sit down with a notebook and a pen, and I would come up with ideas for what's going to happen next in the book, just like, you know, general concepts. And that's plotting. Just sitting there thinking before you write is plotting. But what I want to talk about is outlining, which is having a coherent and organized plan for what you're going to write in every chapter of the book,
Mhm.
which is a lot more involved and and it'll take a lot longer on the front end, but not as much time in the back end.
And that's, one of the things you do. A lot of people, I think, get like freaked out when they hear how much you write. Oh, hey, Jeff is here. Let's
Oh,
pull him.
awesome.
Is he? Is he?
He may be
So
here,
while
folks.
while Jeff is making it in, but I think so many folks like it's like anything when I talk to people about like if you have a high output, like nobody would talk to a contractor and say you have a high output because you do this number of jobs a year, right? Like anybody that does anything professionally knows how to do that job. Like they know how to lay it out in a specific way. And outlining for me is just a big part of that process. Like in order
It's a
to,
blueprint.
what's that?
It's a blueprint.
It's a blueprint, exactly. It's how we're gonna get where we're going to a finished project. So if you're a project manager, that could, I mean, there is even as a certain extent of backwards planning. Like, where do I want my characters to be at the end? Like, what is the impact? Where do I want the story to be at the end? And then work backwards from there, just like you would with a project. And that's probably the best way for me to think of it is project management. And,
Mhm.
because the way you would lay that on a calendar, the way you would lay that out on key tasks, these are contractors that can be here at this time. I need them to do this work at this time. It's basically just a chapter layout, right? Or a character plan on what the characters are going to do in a given chapter or point in the plot. So I mean, that really makes sense to me, but that's kind of the way I think. And for folks coming to this channel and we that's one of the things about being in the military, like that they hammer into you, is you got to, even if the plan goes out the window, like you still have some sort of plan that you're working.
Russians don't take a dump without a plan, son.
Exactly.
Mm.
So when we've talked before, we've got some previous shows to check out that are about plotting and kind of high concept coming up with the story. But why don't can you talk about when do you like even just nuts and bolts? Like, are you gonna, that a 90,000 word novel is gonna have anywhere between 50 and 60 chapters? Is that how you break that down or no? Okay,
It's
how many
way too many
chapters?
chapters.
Okay, well, how many chapters would
Like,
you normally do?
well, I mean, that's a lot of people have shorter chapters than I do. I tend to run to 2,500 to 3,000 word chapters. So so if you go 3,000, 90,000 word novel is going to have 30 chapters. And that's about right for me. Honestly, when I'm outlining, it's tough getting past 30 chapters.
Well, let's break that down further. So if you're doing a longer chapter, like how many scenes or say major kind of action
Two
pieces would be
two
happening?
scenes per chapter
Two
maximum
scenes. Okay.
until I get to the end of the book, and when you may want to, like at the climax, you may want to jump back and forth between two or three perspectives a lot. So there might be more there, but my personal rule is only two scenes per chapter.
Mhm. And how do you break down? So for you, a scene, I've seen it described as like okay, a scene sort of asks a question, has rising tension, tension resolved, and then new tension moving into the next scene to get like really anal about it. How do you think about like that
For
scene
me,
or that nugget?
scenes only transition, I guess the word I'm looking for,
Mhm.
if there's a shift in viewpoint.
Okay.
I don't do a scene and then have a, not always, sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't do a scene and then have a scene break and then have another scene with the same person point of view. I usually shift point of views between scenes if
Hmm.
it's, and when I'm writing a first person POV novel, I don't have as many scene breaks
Hmm.
because it's the same POV. So I'll usually just transition like to a new setting and a new chapter. I don't
Yeah,
have as
and that's more
many
a matter of
scene
time.
breaks.
All right, so Jeff has made it. Hey, it's good to see you. We're talking about outlining and not plotting, but outlining as far as how you plan and basically make your blueprint for the story. And so the question, like one of the things I threw out, 50 to 60 chapters for a 90,000 word book. Rick immediately jumped in and said like, no, that's way too many, 30. But then he does 1,500 to 3,000, 3,000 words,
2,500 to
2,500
3,000.
to 3,000 words per chapter. How do you look at that, Jeff? Like as soon as you hear outline and maybe a full novel, how many chapters are you thinking about?
That's a really great question because it really depends. Like
Mhm.
Rick was saying about first person versus third person. My third person books are considerably longer than my first person books. So like when I was writing, I pantsed Arsenal and Wraith, like completely 100%, could not figure out how to outline. So I pantsed all those books, but it's easy to pants a 60,000 word novel. It is a lot more difficult to keep all the threads and plot lines and characters in your head when you start approaching 100,000 words. I'm sure there are people who can do it. I'm not one of them. It ends up just being a mess. It
Yeah,
took me a long
when I
time.
did longer books without an outline back in the beginning, I had to at certain points just write down all the stuff that had happened, a little synopsis like halfway through the book, just so I remembered.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I approached Grimm's War, I was like, I have to outline this. I've got to figure out a way that works. Most of the books end up having between 40 and 50 chapters, but
Mhm.
most of the books are between 100 to 120,000 words. I don't have a standard length for a chapter. I tend to write longer chapters in the beginning and shorter chapters at the end.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll have chapters that are 500 or 600 words, but that's always from like a perspective that illuminates the story but isn't like critical to the main characters. So, one of the for instance, when I first wrote Grimm's War, one of the feedback I got from one really good friend of mine named Rod Short, who read all the same science fiction I read, was he was like, I really love it when you're in a ship battle and you see parts of the battle from the perspective of like the guy down in engineering or one of the crew in the galley or whatever. So that really informed a lot of and then I remembered like, yeah, I love that too. I don't know why I didn't do it. And so it's funny because that's how Josh Mendez was born as a character in
Mhm.
Criminal War, and he's one of the more popular characters now. Is I wanted a perspective of just an enlisted guy going about his day, even though there was a battle happening. And so when I'm outlining, I tend to do a couple of different outlines. One is the main story, and then I put in like, okay, I know there's going to be at least 6 chapters that are Nadia's subplot, and so I will put in 6 chapters in the outline that are empty because that's going to be Nadia's. I know I'm going to have 4 to 8 chapters that are just either the villain or one of the secondary characters and stuff about them, and so that goes in there, and then it starts to fill everything out so that really when it comes down to it, there's the main story, which is Jacob's story that usually is about half of all the chapters, and then there's all the character the subplots and the characters and things like that that all end up with chapters. And so I have like all the chapters in the writing program I use, which is Atticus, already pre-created, and then I just name them for you know like okay, this is the reversal, this is the midpoint of the book, and this is plot point one, and this is plot point two, and this is plot point four, and plot point five, and because I got into writing and through the hero's journey and through Sid Field's screenplay. So structure is really important to me because structure is how you tell a story that people recognize.
Plot point 3 in 3D.
Yeah. And so yeah, so that's what I do when I'm going through. And the number of chapters, like I'll put in 50, but it might be more, it might be less. That's
Yeah.
just a rough guideline to give me something to look at to kind of visualize where we're at. And then, I'll put in, I'll name the chapter what it's about, basically. None of that makes it into the final book because I don't do name chapters in my books because after a while it becomes really difficult to name chapters.
It becomes really hard to come up with a new name for him.
Exactly.
In my very first book that I ever wrote, Duty on Our Planet, well, wrote for publication, I put a quote at the beginning of each chapter, and people loved that, by the way. And they asked, why don't you keep doing that? It's because it's really hard.
I know.
It's hard coming up with a quote that fits each chapter.
You just need to
I
find those quotations and like randomly open a page and hit something.
Marion G. Harmon, who wrote one of the first really good, successful indie superhero novels, he did that with the beginning of every one of his chapters. It was a quote from the character's journal. And when I went to write a superhero novel, I was like, I'm going to do that, and I did it for chapter 1 for Amelia Lockhart, the Full Metal Superhero Arsenal, and then I got to chapter 2, and I'm like, I'm not doing this for 30 chapters. And then when I did Wraith, a big part of Wraith was Sun Tzu, like her mentor was like, you're going to read Sun Tzu and you're going to memorize it and you're going to use it every single day. And she's like, no, I'm not. And so I wanted to have quotes from Sun Tzu at the beginning of every chapter. And then I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that either. So I have like one quote from Sun Tzu in the beginning of the book, and that's it. Know thy enemy, know thyself, and you'll win, you'll be victorious in every battle. And because it's a really important quote. And so it's funny. It's like I get people like that too. Like they're like, why don't you name all your chapters? And I'm like, because I write a lot. And you get to a certain point where you just run out of pithy ideas for chapter titles.
If you take a year to write a book, you can afford to name your chapters or come up with quotes for every chapter.
Yeah.
If you try to put out a book every couple of months, then you ain't doing that anymore.
Plus, also, it's like you start really reaching. Like I'm on book 9 for Grimm's War. If I was doing named chapters, that's say 40 chapters a book, times 9. That's what, 360 chat 9, 18, 24, 33, 330 chapter names. I mean, come on. I mean, like I'd be reaching. Jacob
What I
told
did
you
with
to sit down, that would be
the
a
at 14 books, I can be a little sillier, but I'm at 14 on those. But I would usually go back to the chapter and find some, phrase or something that I thought was, fun or like pointed to something in the chapter and do that. But trying to go into it, like I used to make that like as part of the outline, I would make the list of things to sort of inspire me as far as what some fun thing in the chapter. And you're right, that gets hard.
But to go to comment or contrast, I suppose, with what Jeff does, um, when I start outlining, I do not start with like a number of chapters and devoting them to different subjects. What I will do first, before anything else, is write like an elevator pitch for the book. All right, this is like I'm telling you what the book's going to be about. I'll just do that right up front. And then after I do that, I will write a longer synopsis. And a synopsis would be like if you were reading a Wikipedia article about a movie and you went down to the part that says plot and somebody explains what the plot of the movie is in like a couple of pages. That's the synopsis, just everything that's going to happen in the book. um, and then I go from there. I will break that synopsis up into sentences, sometimes fragments of sentences, and put each of those in a chapter.
Mhm.
And then once I get that, I can start fleshing out those chapters, putting more detail of what the action will be like, where they're at,
Now, do you
how.
have a point where, because quite often it feels like when you're getting in the real details in this outline, it's still very much I'm pushing the characters where I want them to go. And then do you reach a point where you're kind of updating it based on maybe things about the characters or what the characters are doing?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly in the first book. Hopefully by the other books in the series, you have an idea, you're in the character's head more and you know how they'll react to things and what they would do. But in the first book, especially towards the end of the first book, yeah, I can totally shift things once I get to that point. Now, even in later books, what sometimes happens with outlines is I'll get to a certain point in the book and I'll realize, oh no, this person should be like a supporting character now. They should be part of the book.
Hmm.
And I'll throw that in. And then that really puts a monkey wrench in the works because I've got to go back and redo the outline. Sometimes as much of as a half of the book needs to be re-outlined. And that just makes extra work for me. So I hate that, but I have to do it anyway.
I got 70,000 words into a book and had a character I had added because I wanted to do things with, and then just realized like I just don't really like this person. So I went back and deleted them. And that felt a little mean, but I was like, I'm just not inspired by this character.
You didn't
So
even kill
I
them, you
think
just deleted them. That's cruel, man. That's cold.
I know.
I think I would have killed them off instead of wasting all
Oh,
the
but that's the thing. It felt like I didn't want to lead the reader on like this person means something and then just kill them, you know. So
I mean,
you've
if
got
we're
to have
talking
some
about
characters that mean something that get killed just to make sure everybody knows there's real stakes.
if we're
yeah.
talking about like right from the beginning, because that's not like the first thing I do is not like create the book and like right from the beginning. If I'm sitting down like right from the beginning and I have an idea for a book, the first thing I do is I kind of figure out how I want the reader to feel when they're reading the book. To me, that's the thing the books do best, right? They make you feel things.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of authors like to write visually, like they see the scenes in their head, and I used to do that too. And once I stopped doing that, I started writing the stuff I feel like maybe is a little bit better than just an after action report with details. And and every author is going to do this a different way, right? Every author is going to make you feel things about their book, in a different way. Like the number of times that I thought that Rick was going to kill Cam off in his book just really, and it really shook me. It was just like, don't you even like one time Becky
Be
was like,
hard
"What's
in a
wrong with
first
my call?
person
Don't you
point of
even think
view.
about it, Rick. Don't you even think about it." It was reading
I've been
drunk.
hard in a first person point of view book.
Well,
Well,
sometimes I'm always like, okay, it's a book 6 and there's 2 more, so they can't kill him at this point. So then I'm like, okay, how's he gonna get him out of this? You know,
yeah. But I
and
mean,
then
he
I'm
does a really
wrestling
good
with the
job.
author. I'm like, okay, well, don't screw this up. Like, make this good, you know.
Like the one moment I feel like the most was that one we were talking about the other day where he meets those Marines on the planet and they all have any gear and there's that colonel and like I
Mhm.
really thought that was going to be like you were going to just carry the book on with like somebody else's perspective or something. But so how people feel, how I want them to feel when they come away from the book, and I've got this great editor who really helps me with a lot of stuff like that. And so that's like the first step. Like, how do I want them to feel? Do I want them to be sad? Do I want them to be happy? Do I want them to feel patriotic? Do I want them to feel victorious? And then, this sounds silly, but then I go to like, okay, what is the, because you write enough sci-fi, you write enough, he shot, she shot, they shot, we shot, you know, and you write enough like, I launched torpedoes and stuff like that. Then it becomes like there are iconic moments in the books where like, okay, if I'm going to use drain the can, I can only use it once or twice because people get excited when I write drain the can, you know.
That a euphemism for going to the bathroom?
No, it's
Space Battle begins.
the order given. That would work. It's the order given to drain the atmosphere from the ship.
Oh, okay, I got you.
We're about to have a battle, or
It's a cool euphemism
it is
for
cool because it's a tin can, right? So, um, and also it's there you condition set condition Zulu battle stations stuff like that. So yeah, I got to be aware of those ones. And I just try to come up with like really cool, like one of my favorite space battles I ever wrote was between Interceptor and this experimental Caliphate missile boat. And they were in orbit around a planet, and the planet's orbit was frozen between a dying sun and a black hole. And so it was at the gravitational point where it could no longer revolve around the sun, but it could still, spin. So there's still gravity on the planet. and they couldn't leave orbit because if they left orbit on either side, they would get sucked in to either a sun or a black hole. So they had to like once you left orbit, you had to keep going until you were out of the system and then turn around and come back. And because of the radiation of the sun and the radiation of the of the stuff going to the black hole and other factors, their sensors weren't really working very well. So it was like I had to come up with all these reasons why this battle would work, and it was really really exciting. And so I kind of base like the stories around like okay, what is the battle in history that I'm looking at? How can I apply that to space, and how would that be really cool to do? You know, like for the last book, there was this admiral. His name was Li Chin, and he wasn't um Chinese. It just had a name that sounded like it. But he was considered a battleship sniper in World War II. I mean, he used radar to snipe ships from really far away, and that's kind of what I based. Hold on, what I based the last battle in Legacy on was this battle that he was involved in World War II. So so that's like the steps. And then when I get to actually getting to the point where I'm gonna start, okay, now I need the nuts and bolts of the story. That's when I create the chapters and name the chapters and things like that.
That's interesting because I do not take into account in the outlining how I want the audience to feel, the readers to feel. I kind of, that's something I still kind of pants because I just, what I have in mind is more, this is the story I want to tell. Um, and then when I get to the point in the story, I'll be thinking, how does this make me feel? And what can I do to make people understand how I feel? So I'm a little bit more loose when it comes to that kind of thing. Um, what I try to really nail down in the outline is the things that are the things that take a long time when you're writing and are boring, like like what things look like, what the temperature is, what the light is like, what the buildings are like, the things you have to know that the readers may or may not have to know. Just something that's going to be like when you're writing a battle or a chase scene, um, you need to know where are they going, what does this building look like, where can they take cover, because otherwise it's going to sound very random. So um, I like to get that all out of the way in the outline so that I don't have to think about it when I'm writing things like gunfights or and things like um, dog fights in an atmosphere. I like to know what kind of territory are they going to be over? What are they going to be seeing below them? Just things I can just throw in a line maybe during a fight and not contradict something I said earlier.
I having time to think about those things because that's really what stops me. We talk about okay, like if you only have a certain amount of time to write and you got to get the words done, like I can't waste time thinking about how things are working. Like I need to have already figured that out. And so when I do the outline beforehand, it gives me time to think about that while I'm doing other stuff. And then when it's time to sit down and write, I can use that time to actually write. Because for me, like if I run into a thing where I can't solve a problem, like that just stops me because
Oh yeah.
I don't want to go back and refix it, or I don't want to like end up down a dead end, that didn't work. And I just hate that at this point.
What I hate is when I get somewhere in the book and I have to look something up, like I have to Google it or ask ChatGPT, and it just like totally derails the role I was on. I'm like, I don't know what this is or what this. I have to look this up. And that's the type of thing I try to get out of the way in the outline. Sometimes you get inspired and you want to throw something in, and you're like, I don't know that.
At this point in
But
my life, like my focus is so precious that I just don't want anything getting in the way. Like, because if the story, like the story is the last thing, like I've got so many other things trying to like steal my focus, from kids, pets, everything else that I don't want the story to do that. I can fix that,
parents,
you know?
um, well, it's funny you were saying you can think about that stuff while you're doing something else. For me, I can write the actual novel while other things are going on, but when I'm outlining, I need complete focus.
Hmm.
That's why a novel, I can write 3,000 words a day like clockwork, but for an outline, I just write however much comes to me that day. And I can't be watching, a YouTube video or playing a podcast or talking to anybody. I have to be like alone with my thoughts, and I have to really sink down into it. And I mean, we have a from an old podcast that you used to be part of, Keystroke Medium. We have Keystro Rimo, which is a thing where you list the words you've written every day.
Yeah.
And you can tell when I'm outlining, because when I'm writing a book, unless I'm on a trip or something, it's 3,000 and change every single day. When I'm outlining, it's like 1,000, 2,000, 6,000, 1,000. It's just whatever I can get in that day, whatever comes to me is however much I outline, because it takes a lot of concentration. Sometimes you get a burst of energy and you can write, you know, a buttload of words in this outline and just get a lot of the story out. But other times you're just straining it out.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't hurry that kind of thing. I mean, it sounds strange coming from me because I write, very regularly, but when it comes to outlining it, I don't hurry it. If I have to sit around and think for a day to get, 1,000 words out, then I do.
I knew well, there was supposedly a writer in my local group here that would like get on the bus and just like ride the bus somewhere for 6 hours out and then 6 hours back. And when they were done, they'd have the novel, you know. And I'm like, man, I would just love to like do that on the train or something at some point, just like
So
that.
don't talk to me about your novel writing techniques if you don't have kids or a
I know.
wife
I was
to
just
do
gonna ask.
it
So Jeff,
or
like
all that crap.
you're the most focus challenged of us right now. Like how
There's a reason why my production slowed dramatically over the last 3 years.
Yeah, but I know you're actively working on this problem. Like, I mean, are there ways you've approached it in the past, or what are you doing now?
Well, one of the things that okay, so I've got 6 kids, which isn't as bad as it sounds because 2 of them are adult children, though they still require a tremendous amount of work, apparently. One of them is like 5, so I
Well,
said
I've
that to
heard.
get her attention. Um, but one of the things that I've had to when I first started writing back in 2015, like seriously writing, like I'm gonna make this a career. One of the things I did was give up video games. I stopped watching movies, stopped watching TV shows for the most part, and just like I would get up at 5 a.m. and I'd write. And we only had 2 kids at the time, so it was pretty easy. And they were younger, but they were like 10 and 13, but it was manageable. And I started writing the same year Chris Fox did his 30-day
Right to
novel
market.
challenge thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it ended up being right to market, but yeah. And so and then that worked really well for years. And then I got really sick in 2018 because I was writing I think in 2018 I wrote 6 books in one year, and I got pretty sick. But it was also financially my best year ever. And then so things slowed down. We had our 10-year-old who's now 10 and at the end of 2015. Then we have our 6-year-old who's 2019, and our 3-year-old 2022, and 2022 was the year that Against All Odds came out, and I released 3 books that year that took me 2 years to write all 3 books, and then I released 3 books the next year, and then the last 2 years I've only released 1 book each. So part of it has been like trying to find that time to write, and obviously a partner like Rebecca, a wife like Rebecca, tremendous help, tremendous help. When she's like, okay, just go write, and I can only go a few days without writing before I lose my mind. But that's not always feasible now, especially with the economy kind of sucks, and I've had to get a second job to cover the deficiencies of the year. So now what I've done is I've gone back to the beginning, whereas I'm not playing video games at the moment, with the exception of once a week I play with my son because he's going to go on his mission soon, and I'm going to regret not having spent more time with him for till he gets back. And so I have been writing at night. I write in the mornings. I write If I've got 15 minutes, I know I've got 15 minutes, I sit down and I make myself write. Getting comfortable and having your desk and your the order of which you do things and the music you want to listen to is great, all great and fine, and you should absolutely do that because that will help you get into focus. But there's also the I have to write X amount of words, and this is the time I have to do it.
Yeah.
And you just have to get yourself to that place where it's like, I'm gonna get home from work. I don't care how tired I am. I'm gonna write 500 words. I'm gonna write, I'm gonna take my 30-minute lunch break and I'm gonna write 500 words in that 30 minutes. And it doesn't matter if they're good or bad or indifferent or whatever, you're still gonna write them because you can't edit a blank page. And you don't have the luxury of your cup of tea and
Right.
your music playing and all that stuff. You just have to get it done. And
Forgot the golden retriever in the pipe.
yeah, and then you get to that place where you're Rick and you're making $10 million a year, and you can
Jesus.
you can buy a ranch in Wyoming and on 100 acres and have armed guards protecting your family, and
I think you have me confused with Jack Reacher with Lee Child.
Lee Child. I mean, for me, going back to like how long is a scene, or how long is a chapter, I would say like exactly what Jeff is saying. Like I go through the same thing. Like I have X amount of time to write 500 to 600 words. If I fully thought it through and I can do it, and this is what's going to happen, and that kind of shapes the pace of the book a lot of times. Like this is how long a scene is going to be. This is how long a chapter is because that's what I have to get that done. You know. Um, because I have to do the exact same thing. Like this is the time I have to get this done. This has to happen. I'll spend time thinking about it while I'm doing something else. Like, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what I want the character to do and feel. And it does get harder to hold all that in my head as time goes on. And that's a thing I worry a lot about, that I'm repeating something, because having to go back, I mean, we were bagging on writing into the dark a little bit at the beginning. And basically what that is, like Dean Wesley Smith's whole thing is that you write, like
dancing. That's all it
whatever,
is.
1,500 words. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you go back at the start of your next writing session and look at what you wrote. And if you need to rewrite or fix something, you fix it and then you write again. Right. Well, it's very hard for me, at least, when I don't have like sustained time to sit down to go back and do that looking. And so that's where I really worry a lot of times, or I'll, have lost details I'm trying to remember. And so I make notes, and that's something where actually Notebook LM, Google's tool, has been very helpful to me, because I'll update a manuscript as I'm working on it, feed it back into Notebook LM, and then I can just ask questions like, okay, who is this colonel? Who is this character? Like, what were the color of their eyes? So I can remember those things as I'm going forward. I don't have to waste time trying to find them, and probably if I did do like the current, if you work on a project long enough, like the outline, it gets hard. Like you probably, then this is something we could talk about. Like you should go back and update your outline rather than wasting time while you're writing, trying to figure that stuff out while you're going, at least for me, because that's where things really start getting in the way of getting work done, when maybe I should spend a little more time like updating the outline I'm working on, and then use focus time to write. I don't know. I mean, you guys, maybe Jeff, are you running into that? Like if you have to pick up and put down a project a lot?
Well, the part of the problem I'm running into now, yeah, because my newest project, Endless War, is I'm writing it in bits and pieces, and yeah, I got to the end much faster than I thought I would, and so I had to move what I wrote for the ending to the end, and I'm filling it in, so to speak. And I lost the plot on the outline, and so I'm kind of pantsing it a little bit, and it's definitely slowing me down a lot. And so I need to, one of my things to do this week is to go back through and reform the outline from where I'm at to the ending I've already written, so that I can have it make sense and have it work. The
Yeah, that's something I can't do. I just could not bring myself to do, is once I've written the book, to rearrange the parts of it. I don't know, just the thought makes my gut
it's
punch.
gonna sound artsy fartsy, and I swear it's not. It's just I come from writing as one. I always wanted to be a writer. I was a little kid. I loved telling stories. I loved, I'd arrange my GI Joes, and they'd have these epic battles, and it wasn't just me like throwing things together. There's always a point to it. And then when I got into playing Dungeons and Dragons, I was always the DM because I was always telling the stories. Well, always the DM, but like 80% of the time. And the as an adult, when me and my wife and our friend group from 15 years ago would play D&D, I was the DM too, and they loved the stories. And but then when I got into writing, it kind of scratched that itch, and I couldn't really DM and tell and write anymore because the writing used up all the creativity. And what I realized was while I was writing is that when you're DMing a game, for those who don't know, that means Dungeon Master. When you're running a story for a group of friends in a game like Dungeons and Dragons or Shadowrun or Pathfinder, you have immediate feedback on your story. And I
Yeah.
don't mean like the words that they say. They're not like, oh, this sucks, Jeff, or whatever. I mean, like, are they looking at their phone? Are they engaging in conversations? Or are they glued to everything you're saying and invested in their characters and their story? And so when I'm writing, I have this sort of like sense of like, okay, this is exciting. This is boring. This has gone on too long. This is the ending. And so when I was writing the scene in Endless War, I wrote past it and realized I was like, oh, wait a second, this is wrong. This feels like a second book. And I went back and reread what I wrote and realized that was the ending of the book because there's no way for me to top it in the book and have it make thematic sense. And I don't want to spoil it, but it's kind of amazing. And to try and top it in the same book would feel like try hard.
So
And
had
so,
you outlined up to that point then?
yeah, I mean, I had the whole book outlined,
Yeah.
and that was the halfway point
Where
of
do
the
you
book
think
and what
you
happened.
wrote past what you were doing? Like, where do you think in the outline you'd written this part out? Was there something that was like compressed or didn't get, once you
No,
got
no,
to
it was the book was supposed to end with him going back to Earth and fighting the aliens on Earth
it? Mhm.
because he's on this planet where they do all the experiments on him and they give him his armor. And for those who don't know, it's sort of a it's a love letter to Halo is what it is for me. It's a love letter to Halo. I love Halo, and this is me writing Halo because they won't let me write actual Halo. And so he's Master Chief, but he's in the army, so he's a Master Sergeant, that kind of thing. And but he's just a kid from a farm world. He's Audie Murphy, I mean, he's small. He's not the best soldier, but he's a really good shot. And there's something in your brain, in your hand-eye coordination that allows him, because his hand-eye coordination is so good when it comes to shooting, it allows his brain to adapt to this armor, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, so I had this whole big outline, and in the middle of the book, he's fighting on this alien spaceship, and this thing happens, and I thought, that's really cool. I'm going to do that. That'll be really great. And not to toot my own horn or anything, but I'm a pretty decent writer. And I wrote this really incredible theme. And it was
Days
just,
so it's true.
yeah. Well, I mean, 29,000 people can't be wrong, right? Yeah, they
Right.
can't. And so I wrote this incredible scene and realized that is like, in storytelling, there's these brackets, like you pose a question at the beginning of the book and you answer the question at the end of the book. And I realized that I had done that. And to go on beyond that would be like the fight scene at the end of Man of Steel. The movie ended when he and Lois kissed. And then there's 25 more minutes of movie that have zero emotional impact because the movie already ended. And so to me, structure and all that stuff is really important, and the way you feel at the end of the book is really important. So I moved that to the end, and so now I've gone back and I've written a lot more, like more training and more stuff that happens before he gets his armor, and then I'm writing more stuff about after he gets his armor instead of like going kind of right into the climax of the book. And the good thing is it only has to be 85,000-90,000 words because it's first person and it's more action-based military sci-fi than Grimm's War, which is, there's a lot of political thriller involved in it and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I'm in the process of going through and like reverse outlining what I've already written and extending that so that it flows better into the ending that I've already written.
Mhm.
I know what you mean about hitting the end, hitting a spot that was supposed to be before the end, and then realizing this should be the end of the book. I've had that happen a couple times too. You like you really need a couple more chapters that you plan for them, but you get to this point and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. This is exactly where the book should end.
Yeah, and if you do any more, you end up with like oh, okay, well, here's 7 chapters of epilogue.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
emotional
I
high
just read a
point
book
of
that
the
did
book
that.
has happened. And and I'm sure there are writers who are like, well, that never happens to me because the books end exactly where I want them to end and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. And I'm sure there are better writers than me that this never happens to. Um, but it happened. And, it is what it is. And I'm not going to sacrifice a really great ending because it wasn't supposed to end there. And what'll end up happening if I tried to force that and like have that be the middle of the book instead of the end of the book, all that would happen, it would be the next half of the book would be people going, wow, how's he going to top that? And they get to the end of the book and be like, oh, it's kind of a letdown.
Or it could be you could consider it a challenge. Like, how do I top that?
I
Mhm.
don't want to top it though. That's the whole thing.
Well,
Yeah.
quite often when
It's
that
that great.
happens, it'll end on some kind of cliffhanger that angers people rather than, you have the big set piece that is super awesome and then move into something else. I mean, I don't know. I do feel like readers almost always, like I always try to do an err on the side of giving them more at the end, even when it does seem like, okay, maybe this is the end of the action, but what can I give that's some more character stuff that people will enjoy? Because people do really want that, like to give them time to kind of chill out a little bit as the story, rather than just ending it abruptly, which is, kind of a lesson I've learned over time.
Yeah,
But
and not to bag on Man of Steel, but you guys have seen it. The
yeah,
beginning of that movie, the first 15 minutes of that movie, you had my wife and I leaving going like, can we watch that movie? Because that Russell Crowe, amazing, and as Clark's father, and it's just like I was like, how is he possibly going to top that? And spoiler alert, he doesn't really. I mean, not the Man of Steel is not fun and good to watch,
yeah, I
Not
remember
Clark.
hardly
By
any
the way, he's
even
not Clark's
parts.
father. He's Kal-El's father.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Cal's
I
father.
don't remember hardly anything from that movie, so it didn't have that big an impact on me at all.
Well, I mean, it's Russell Crowe, and I'm a huge fan of Russell Crowe, and they have
Yeah.
this spectacular beginning where he launches. It ends with Clark being or Kal-El being launched into space toward Earth, and it was really powerful. It was really well done. And I remember thinking in theaters, Rebecca and I were like, how's he going to top this? And he doesn't really. It's still good, still a good movie, still enjoy that movie, but he never tops that opening.
Mhm.
And when things as writers, you got to be aware of that when you're writing a scene or you're writing a section of scene, a series of scenes or a chapter or whatever. Like there's a flow to a book, right? And it's going uphill until it gets to the very top of the hill, and that's the end of the book. And to go beyond that is to waste everybody's time.
I mean, sometimes you have a denouement, but
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean. Like,
yeah,
it has to be short, is the thing.
yeah.
well, and
It,
this is a
you,
piece with longer, especially as you get further into a series where people love the characters. Like, they don't want to feel, I think, chopped off with the characters. Like, and maybe if you can clarify this a little bit, because I think yes, the plot, like the major set piece, the major action of the story has ended, but I think people do like to see the characters, at least one chapter of them doing something, so we can feel resolved as they move
Well, yeah.
forward. You
Like
know?
Rick was saying, the denouement. Like I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
almost all of my books end, and then there's like an epilogue or one chapter that resolves the what where the character's going and what they're doing next, kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
in the last in the first book, it was the final chapter was Jacob going on, spoiler alert for a book that came out 3 years ago. Jacob going on to the Alexander, which was the flagship of the Alliance, and thinking that his career was over and actually getting awarded a Silver Star or Bronze Star, something like that. And getting command of the intercept, getting to go to command school on Black Rock. And so yeah, the story ended when the main action of the story ended at the destruction of the pirate ship. But the story wasn't about the destruction of the pirate ship. It was about Jacob being in command of the Interceptor and what his future, his
Right.
career as a naval officer was. So, so in that respect, yeah, when the story ends, the book ends. I don't tend to go on further. And so, but I always do leave a little bit for that last Gideon, that last chapter. Um, so I'm not ending with like, and then the ship's exploded and you think everybody died because that would be a cliffhanger. And that goes back to like, what is your story actually about? Is it about him defeating the bad guy ship? Because you kind of know he's going to do that every book for the last one.
I mean, it's more interesting like how he does it. That's the
Yeah.
thing. You know he's going to do it. I want to know how he's going to do it.
But the that's the plot, right? But the story is how the character deals with it. And
Right.
so there's always that last chapter, like Rick says, the denouement, where it's like, he goes back to his home and his wife's there, and how does he deal with it, and what happened to the other people, and did so and so get his legs blown off, and how's he going to handle that, and that kind of thing. But you can't drag that on as much as you want to. And I learned this lesson the hard way because I wrote this one book series and the characters were such good friends. I really wanted to just write a story that was them having like a movie night. And boy, did that suck. I'm not Gen Z
Well,
enough to
why? Like, say
write a
why?
story
What part of it
that's
sucked? Like, you got feedback on it that people didn't
boring.
like it, or what? It
It's
was boring.
boring.
Yeah.
What's the number one rule of writing?
Well,
Don't be
no,
boring.
but did you think it was boring, or did readers
Yes, I
think?
thought it was boring.
Okay, but what did readers say?
Doesn't really matter because I never showed it to them because it was
Ah, okay.
boring.
I just think we're in a
I
time
don't do alpha and beta readers.
you
I
get paid for the
I know
number of
what my
words.
stories are, and if they're boring, I'm not going to waste my readers' time with them. I have multiple 30 and 40,000 word beginnings to
Yeah.
books that were boring that I have never shown to readers because they're boring, and I'm not going to like sometimes I like the behind the scenes stuff, and sometimes I don't. Like I don't watch the behind the scenes stuff of Avengers Endgame because Avengers Endgame was the end. And I don't need it to be made fun of or to watch, Tony say, I am Iron Man and then like crack a joke or whatever.
So I'm not going to argue that we should put out things that are boring. I just think we're in a time where, like, readers do like that stuff as you get
Lit
further into the
RPG is
series.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Which is why I have such a hard time trying to write it because
Oh, yeah, I would never write it. I can't.
it's slice of life, and slice of life is boring to me. And if I was the kind of writer who could write like little flash fictions about the characters and like their life or whatever, and put that out like on Patreon and actually maybe have a chance at making some money, I probably would.
Mhm.
That's why I couldn't do um, survival fiction because a lot of survival fiction is just them doing all these preparations
Like
and
the guy in the
all the.
Australian outback that just makes things out of palm fronds and you just watch him do it
Yeah.
on a recording
I'm
base.
talking more like you read like these guys who are surviving a nuclear war or some a post-apocalyptic stuff, but half the book is, oh, this is how I pack this food and this is how I, you know, arrange my water
Or
filtration system. It's just
before he turned it into a harem series, is it Jason Scott Earl?
who?
Something Scott Earl. Like, oh man,
Oh,
I'm
Michael
Michael Scott
Scott.
Earl?
Michael Scott Earl. Sorry, Michael. I was
Yeah.
blanking on your name. Always been a really nice guy to me. So just I'm not bagging on him.
MSC is how you remember.
He's always been he's always been really nice to me. So I'm not bagging on him. I'm not commenting on him or his lifestyle or his what he writes or anything like that. Tamer was one of my favorite books, and it was a regular guy got put into Ark Survival Evolved.
Mhm.
And if you've ever played Ark Survival Evolved, or if you've never played it, it's a game where you wake up on a beach naked and there are dinosaurs,
I find that game so boring.
and you have to survive. And
Yeah.
I never wanted to write in another indie author's IP until I read that, and I was just like, oh my gosh, and he did it really well. I
Mhm.
can't write it. I tried.
I mean, I'm on book 6 of Dungeon Crawler Carl right now. I got sucked into that. And the thing about that,
Reading it or listening to it.
I'm listening to it, and I will say I will highly recommend it for anybody. The audio makes me want to write lit RPG just so I can query this studio to get
It
them to
pays.
write because it is
It
amazing.
pays.
But I would actually argue that it's not like I haven't read a lot of lit RPGs, so I'll just say that up front. But to me, this book is more like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy than it is about
It
gaming.
is.
Like
It is game lit, is what it is.
it's game lit, but it's also the story broadens a
He's
lot.
not hardcore lit RPG
Yeah,
because he's not in a gaming world.
and it's
It's
alien
game lit. It is
invasion.
lit RPG. I mean, it falls under the umbrella of lit
Yeah.
RPG. But yeah, no, absolutely. That book is when you get to the last book, you're never going to look at. I don't know if you know who Bapcat is,
Mhm.
but it's that cat who baps the cards and gets the answers, like Cards Against Humanity. They play Cards Against Humanity with a cat.
Mhm.
You will never look at that the same again, ever. And I've met the guy. Matt is awesome. Most indie authors, most authors in general I've met are just amazing people who are like really friendly and kind, especially the successful ones. But he came up with a really, really unique take on an idea that I
Mhm.
thought was really cool. And I have, and that's just not me. It's just not me. I
Yeah.
love military sci-fi, so I'm just gonna keep writing the way I write and keep writing military sci-fi, and eventually, maybe one day I'll come up with a really cool little RPG idea. Maybe
I mean, it
some.
makes me want to. I'm outlining. I'm doing another story for Chris Kennedy's next Universe at War, and it's got to include a sword. And so I've been thinking about different ways I could get people into a scenario to use some kind of like I want to write something like Doom. That's what I was thinking about because like doing like a plasma sword in a Doom setting sounds pretty, fun. Um, but
Who's that author you guys are always talking about? He wrote a book series called the Doom. No, in the universe they had plasma weapons, but the plasma weapons required 2 minutes to charge between firing, and so everybody would shoot their plasma pistols and then they would charge with swords.
Who wrote this?
I don't know.
Is it? You said it was in the Dune universe?
No, no, no. It was. I was trying to remember the name of the book
Yeah,
Oh,
series. Um, it it it,
it's
it
like
was
current or it's classic SF.
no, no. It was like 90. I think it came out in 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
It was like a 7 book series, and it was about this guy, and they go through these. It was space opera. It wasn't military sci-fi,
Hmm.
but it was really cool. Is they had these plasma weapons and these crystals, and they took 2 minutes to recharge, and so they would all shoot each other with their plasma weapons, and then they would charge like it was medieval times, and then in the middle of the battles,
Oh, Jerry Purnell, Janissaries. Is that the one?
no, no, it wasn't Jerry
No.
Purnell. It was all right, you guys talk. I'm gonna find the name of it.
Okay.
well, now I'm totally derailed
I
though.
know. I know.
Anyway, getting back to the outlining thing, um, I think that that's a misconception that people have that if you write quickly, that you are somehow not taking the time to be meticulous, I guess is the word I'm looking for, with the plot of the book or with the characters. But if you take your time outlining, and if you spend as much time as the book requires outlining, you get all that done ahead of time.
Hmm.
I mean, that's why I say I don't have to concentrate when I'm writing because I know what's going to happen. I have to make the words flow, make them sound as good as possible, but I don't have to sit there and think what's going to happen next, which takes away a lot of the sitting around staring at the screen time. Now, it takes a while to write an outline like that. It sometimes if I'm writing a new universe and a first book in it, it can take me 2 weeks to write an outline. It'll be like 10 or 12,000 words long. But once you get that complete of an outline done, you don't have to sit there and stare at the screen. You don't have to be like beating your head against the wall, like what's going to happen next? What is this character going to do? What's the art going to be like? You should have all that done.
And if it's
Mhm.
not done, go back to the outline, go back to your concept and look at it
Exactly.
again. And that's a good time to
It's the
bounce it
Death
against each
Stalker
other.
series by Simon R. Green.
Oh, I've
That's
heard
the
of that. I
Stalker.
never read it.
Okay. I have not read that.
Awesome, awesome space opera. Really cool way of getting people to carry swords and be good with them. And because the plasma weapons are so powerful, there's no defense against them. There's no shields, there's no armor you could wear that would protect you from them. So everybody goes, basically goes back to dueling with swords and carrying a plasma pistol. So yeah, Deathstalker. The first one came out in 1995, and I read that. I think I was in the army, and it was really good.
Yeah, I've seen the books, but I never got to reading them. I'm not really into I've never really been into books with swords and blasters. Not since John Carter of Mars, anyway.
Another great series that everybody should read.
Which will,
But yeah, I'm with Rick. I mean, like when you have a really good outline and your outline's really, really flowing and really doing good, the writing is super easy.
yeah.
Uh, Rick has got the reason why Rick has got 84 or 85 or 900 books or whatever it is that now he's up to is because he's got this process like nailed down with the outline that works for him. And he's a machine. And I always tell people that he's a machine. He's a
Well,
robot.
He's a human person.
It's
He's a
not. It's
human
not so
boy.
much being a machine as it is following a process. Following a. I mean, it's like it's like if you work at an assembly line, like in say an automotive assembly line pre-robots.
Mhm.
Um, the real work, the real brain work, is the guys who designed the car, the guys who engineered
Like the
each piece to fit
process.
together. If you're putting
Yeah.
those pieces together, that's you may need to know what you're doing. You may need to be an expert at that particular task, but you don't have to sit there and think about what I want this car to look like. How big of an engine should I put? All that's decided first. Now, as a writer, you decide that, but it's a separate process. It's not like you have to be on the assembly line thinking about whether you're building a Corvette or a Sierra pickup. You've already decided that. All that's been engineered. All you got to do is put the pieces together. And that's why I'm working on my 85th book and hope to get to 100 before I'm 60.
Well,
What's funny is Rebecca, that's kind of how Rebecca works when she's doing her art. She does my covers and she does a lot of covers for Athon. And, a lot of times she'll be halfway through the process. She's like, this cover sucks. And I'm like, honey, just trust your process. You have a process. It works. I mean, I've been through this a million times. It works every single time. And in 2 days, you're going to tell me like, this is one of the best covers I've ever done. You just got to trust the process. And I'm still getting to that place where I need to fine tune my process. And once I've got it fine tuned, I know I'm going to get back to cranking out books the way I used to, through sheer brute force that I just don't have the time for anymore. I just can't power my way through it. I got to be more efficient.
and I will say this, like I'm as much saying it to myself as like both these guys have said it to me, but you're good at what you do, and the thing, like just finish the thing and get it done, and it will be good. Don't like get worried about it in the
There
middle.
is virtue in being done with a project.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
remember that if you screw it up and it is bad, write another one.
Write another one. Right.
Or, and I tell people this all the time. I'm like, the key to being successful as a writer is you write a trilogy and then you sell that trilogy. And if it takes off, you write a series. And if it doesn't take off, you write another trilogy.
Take what you learned
And
and do
you do
something
not
new.
keep trying to sell the same book over and over again.
Exactly.
Do not fall into that trap of like,
Well,
well, I've written a masterpiece.
that comes from the beginning of indie publishing when people had the idea that you can take this, 3 books you wrote and just keep selling them over and over again. And that hasn't worked for quite a while.
Mhm.
But
No.
One thing
And
we were just talking about Matt
nor are you
Denman.
likely to have, I mean, you're more likely probably to get hit by a car or struck by lightning than you are to write one book and have it sell 10,000 copies on the first day.
Yeah.
That does happen. It's not going to happen to you. And nor do you want it to, because I've never met anybody who had that kind of instant luck success that is still writing.
Well,
Everybody
some
who's still writing,
writers, you go back and look at like
your first book sold 10,000 copies.
I put 2 books out at the same time, and within 3 months, they sold 30,000 copies of the two.
yeah, but
well,
that was
one person
Amazon
I know.
2016 magic.
But
One
that
person I know.
but that wasn't that the difference is that was in 2011,
Oh,
which is a
2011. Okay,
totally
that's
different
right.
time.
Yeah,
Nothing,
Nowadays,
nothing else
I mean,
available on the
like,
Kindle.
yeah, you can have that, honey. I know 100 other writers who that's happened to, and they're nowhere to be seen anymore. So
that's only because I'm stupidly stubborn.
you are stupid. Yes. And
But you
so
never know which thing is going to hit. Like that's the
no.
thing. Like, so you go back and look at a writer that like, Matt Denman, I was looking at, okay, was this his first book? No,
Yeah.
no, it was not. And he didn't even plan on doing like this was going to be something like a 5-book series, I think. And then
Yeah.
he had to rework his
Look at
plan.
Terry Maggart.
Yeah, yeah, Terry.
Oh, yeah,
And
that
Terry
makes
is
sense.
such a good example of he has tried different things and has had a high level of success, but he's tried a lot of different things. So
Yeah,
Matt
it wasn't
Matt
until he
wrote
hit Backyard Starship that really
yeah.
took off.
yeah.
And now he's got a new one coming out too. And Matt wrote Kaijus, something about Kaijus,
Yeah.
and some other books too before. And Dungeon Crawler Carl was just something he wrote because it was going to be fun, and he wrote it and it took off. And The best thing you can do is just write the best book you can write. Write a trilogy, release it. If it doesn't take off, that's okay. Don't throw good money after bad. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you're the greatest writer who ever lived. And if people could just read it, they would know that. Write something else and just rinse and repeat. And if you can't do that, then,
The last thing I
but
want to say about outlining though is sometimes like people will answer a question about the story and then feel like they don't even want to write it anymore. Like leave yourself, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but leave things in there that you can in the course of the story make up, be excited about. Like you still have fun writing that even though you're outlining it, which Pantsers try to make the argument about this that you're not having fun while you're writing. Like there are still a lot of questions to answer in the course of the outline. So just think about that too. But we got to
should
take
wrap
off.
up. And
Yeah, we got to take off. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see y'all next time. We'd love to hear what you think about outlining if you tried to do it. So let us know.
don't forget to like, smash, subscribe, all those stupid things.
All those things.
Share.
All right. See y'all later.
everybody.
Bye.
Adios.